All right, today's special guest on the Rhino Zoomcast is Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central, Zoomcast regular now. Um, finally had some sports to talk about this weekend. You know, we've been waiting and we've been hungry for something to come on for us to talk about. And the NFL draft came on Thursday night with the first round, and then went through the weekend through the seventh round. And we finally had some sports, some local flavor in there involved with the Gamecocks and Tigers, and then a bunch of SEC guys got picked. So I guess we'll talk about Kinlaw to start with. What did you think going in? Where did you think he would go? You know, he was projected up as far as maybe 6'7", maybe the Panthers. He slid back down to the 49ers, which is actually a great fit for him, I think, with what John Lynch has built on the defensive side of the football. So, as far as Kinlaw goes, what do you think about the pick and his future?
Yeah, I think like you said, man, I think it's a great fit for him. You know, the Panthers are obviously thinking defensive line, and I guess Hurney liked Derek Brown a little bit more. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, I mean, Charlotte would have been nice, I'm sure, for him from a, you know, geography standpoint. But, I mean, you're going into a ready-made situation, I think, with the Niners. And, you know, I know they lost one of their key cogs on their defensive line, but I think for Javon, there's for one, there's a lot of responsibility because I think they're going to be expecting him to come right in and plug right in there and start. But with that, there's a great opportunity. You know, it's a defensive line that he's going to have guys around him who can, you know, get pressure and get in the backfield. So there's not going to be quite as much pressure on him to do it alone, I think. And, you know, if you're looking at just a team that's built, I think you even look at sort of the Niners' approach to the draft. To me, they look like a team that was sort of adding, okay, we need to add this guy here, this guy there, because we feel like we're going to be back right in that Super Bowl conversation. And so they're at the point where they're able to fill needs in the first round. And I think, you know, Javon, man, the thing about him, as much as we saw him progress in Columbia, there's still so much upside there with Javon. And he was such a raw player out of high school. You know, he's really just, I think, began to learn what he's capable of at defensive tackle and at that size and strength. So I'm excited for him, man. You can't help but pull for Javon Kinlaw. It's a great story. Good dude. He's got a daughter, of course, now that he's trying to provide for. So all in all, man, I don't know if it could have gone any better, though, as far as finding a good fit for him. San Francisco is a far cry from South Carolina, but I mean, he's got Debo out there, somebody he knows and knows pretty well, plus a great organization. It's a really good fit, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of people get caught up in where they get drafted, but sometimes it's better to fall because when you fall to a better team. You know, like you said, San Francisco has drafted first-round picks on the defensive line, and like you said, it won't be all on him. Where in Carolina, Derek Brown may have to anchor that defensive line as a rookie, you know, or at least play a big role where with Bosa and all those other guys out in San Francisco, plus an offense that can score. Like you said, Debo's there. It'll be an easier transition maybe. The weight won't be on him, and they can, you know, give him a little time to grow and get up to speed to the NFL versus, you know, what he's used to in college. So, yeah, I think it's a perfect fit. And I'd much rather go to a winning organization, an organization that has proven they want to win versus just being in the NFL. Because at the end of the day, the money kind of equals itself out. But they're all getting paid. But if you're going to play, you might as well win.
Yeah, and I'm a big college guy as opposed to NFL guy. But the more drafts I've seen, the more I've watched guys sort of move on to the NFL, the more it seems like it's just as much about getting the right situation as it is your talent as a player. And I think, you know, for him, the big thing is you want to get to that second contract, you know, and that's when you can really make even more money. And I think being in a solid place like that puts you in that situation to potentially get to that second contract, you know, whether it's with the Niners or whether you've built up your stock to, you know, to go somewhere else. So I think, you know, all the way around, it's a good fit. I think it seems like the Niners, they must like something, you know, John Lynch and those guys must like something about what they see from the South Carolina program as far as toughness and sort of the way Muschamp's trying to build his foundation. So, yeah, I think it's a good fit all the way around. I'll be curious to see how quickly he sort of moves into the rotation. But Yeah, like I said, man, I'm excited for him, and you really you don't want to get stuck in the middle of a rebuild, and you're trying to build up, your ability as a player and progress, but the maybe your franchise isn't even really trying to win at that time. That can be a bad situation for everybody, and I think the Niners, there's only so many teams that are like in a window right now where it's like a win now window, and I think the Niners are definitely one of those teams.
I definitely agree. I mean, runners up to the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, and there's no reason to think they won't be back. They made a trade to get Trent Williams for the offensive line. The offense should be solid, and now the defense is just as solid. All right, let's go back. Brian Edwards, who was kind of a wild card going into the season. He's a guy who's hold all the records pretty much at South Carolina as a receiver, a big, strong guy who will go up, can get it. Unfortunate senior season, I guess, record-wise, and then breaks his foot, at the tryout, the combine type thing. So he slides a little bit, but still gets drafted in the third round. A lot of upside on this guy. He looks a lot like Alshon, maybe. What do you see about Brian Edwards going forward from this point on?
Yeah, man, I think like you said, he was hurt bad by the fact that he was not able to have the pro day, and I think a lot of guys were hurt by that. The fact that the combine came at a time when he was still sort of dealing with the injury. There was hope at that time that he'd be back able to run around and show teams what he was capable of. So I do think he fell a little bit from what he maybe would have been. The other thing that hurt Brian is just that, the people that know way more about the draft than I do basically said this is as deep a receiver class as you're ever going to see. So, I mean, I was looking at the list, and just as the draft went on, sort of tracking that list where they showed best available, and, you see 10 guys listed ahead of Brian Edwards, and you're like, dang, man, like there are some really good receivers in this class. So, that hurt him, but still, he actually, if you break it down to what they were projecting before the draft, he actually ended up going a little bit higher than he was projected the week leading in. The week leading in, there was some projection had him all the way back into the fourth round or very late third. So, he sneaks in with the Raiders. I'm not quite as maybe comfortable with the Raiders as a franchise as I am with the Niners, but, an opportunity where they went very receiver heavy. He's not going to be asked to come in and be the number one receiver. We'll see if they can get him the ball and do all those things. But, you're happy for Brian. And I do think on a big picture standpoint, there was a long stretch, man, where South Carolina players had just history recently of leaving before they were ready. And I think with both Javon and Brian coming back for their senior years, even though it didn't necessarily work out on the field, certainly with Javon, I believe his senior film and just continuing to develop as a player put him – I don't think he was a first-rounder, this time last year. So right. I think both of those guys coming back was probably a good move for them. Okay,
then you get – later on, Wanham goes to the Vikings, and he was a team captain twice. He's respected around the SEC. He was been on some watch lists, big, strong guy. What do you see his fit with the Vikings? You think he hangs on there, or you see the upside? You know more about him probably individually than a lot of people do. What do you see as far as where Wanham goes and where he stays in the league?
Yeah, man, I think this dude is going to end up being one of the surprises of the draft. I mean, you look at the way people talk about DJ Wanham. I remember one of his first practices at South Carolina. Lance Thompson was a defensive line coach at the time, just saying, this dude does everything we ask of. He's the first guy in the building. He's the last guy to leave. His football IQ is off the charts. And then he goes to the combine and I think tested a little bit better than most people expected. I think his athleticism fits in the NFL a little bit better than maybe we even thought watching him play. So I think that, you look at the Vikings, they've done a pretty good job, I think, of drafting defensive linemen over the years. He's going to be one of those guys. He may not be a superstar in the league, but he's one of the type guys that you know what you're going to get out of him, which I think there's value in knowing, all right, this guy's not going to be a problem off the field. He's not going to be someone that complains about playing time or complains about having to work or anything like that. Just as a locker room guy, not a lead by rah rah talking type guy, but a lead by example. Just a good all around kid, good family. Throw in the fact that he's got pretty good size. He's very athletic. I think he'll just be one of those guys that quietly goes about his business. Your average NFL fan maybe won't be able to say who DJ Wanham is, but I think we may look back, man, in 8 years, when I'm talking on this podcast and you got like 100,000 subscribers or something. We're talking about DJ Wanham. I'll be like, hey, remember I told you 8 years ago this guy's still going to be in the league. So I think he's going to be in the league a long time, man.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing, man. I mean, you don't have to be a superstar. I mean, they're not making, $13 an hour, working somewhere. If you stay in the league, like you said, that second contract sets you up. Once you get your rookie year, which Kinlaw's rookie deal is a good bit of money because he's so early. But, I mean, that second deal, you're talking 8 to 10, 12, $15 million possibly. And that's not being elite. That's not clowny money. That's not 20-something million a year. So, like you said, if he stays in the league like a Devin Taylor or John Abraham, some guy who just keeps getting paid, he'll be set to go when he's mid-30s. He can call it quits, and he should be sitting on a large bankroll.
Yeah, and once you're vested in the league and they're having to pay you for life, then man, you can go do whatever you want, whatever business you want to start, or if you want to go sit on a beach, whatever you desire, you're good at that point. So, and I think he's a smart dude, man. Like he'll be one of the guys that handles all that the right way. And, he's got a brother, obviously, who'll be coming out either this coming season or the next, which, that is good to be a Wanham these days, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. And last but not least for the Gamecocks in the draft itself, the first guy that Will Muschamp went and talked to when he came to town, had his press conference, went straight over to Richland Northeast High School, signed up T.J. Brunson. He came in and made some plays as a freshman and sophomore. And then when he kind of moved into the leadership role, maybe the middle linebacker, let's say, you didn't see him as much. Maybe he wasn't as potent in the defense that we saw early on. And maybe that was more responsibility, or maybe that's what he was supposed to do. But where do you see T.J. Brunson? How does his game transcend in the NFL, and what's his future, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think happy for TJ, first of all, because I didn't know if he was going to sort of make the cut, so to speak. I think he was going to be right there on the line between drafted and undrafted free agent. And, he didn't get invited to the combine, and not getting to have a pro day, basically, I believe is probably just one of those situations where one team, in this case, the Giants, meets him, probably falls in love with what he's all about, likes the film. He's a tough kid, very high football IQ. I think the biggest thing for TJ is going to be able to, can he prove that he can get out and cover, some of these running backs in space when you have to do that in the NFL. Today's NFL, linebackers are a little bit different than they used to be. I think that'll be the biggest challenge for TJ. But like I said, smart kid, man, tough nose, does everything asked of him, tackling machine. I think some of that, I think Ernest Jones honestly took some of TJ's tackles, as he sort of grew into his role within the defense as well. So that maybe hurt the numbers a little bit later in TJ's career. But, yeah, happy for him, man. And like you said, TJ, the first guy Muschamp ever saw as a Gamecock coach. Brian Edwards, the second guy he ever saw as a Gamecock coach. And so both guys get drafted in this class, which, I think says something that South Carolina's obviously putting guys into the league. The other side of that is that they got to continue to get more of these dudes and put out more guys in the league, because you look around the SEC and the number of guys that the top teams in the SEC are putting out, it's just ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, you saw LSU and Alabama. It was like every other pick. LSU corner, LSU wide receiver, quarterback, running back. Alabama, same offensive line, and it was Alabama, LSU, and then, the SEC, Georgia had a few, and then South Carolina had a few. But it was LSU and Alabama were way up here, and then you had some middle ground and then on down. But Let's talk about the undrafted guys. What are their chances? Rico Dowdle signs with Dallas. And let me ask you this question. I don't know if you know the answer. What does this signing mean? When you sign a free agent, what does what does it entail? It says you get to come, and you get to come to our facility and, I guess, try out. But what does it entail as far as commitment? Is there any? Can they just the next day, can they send you home or finances? How does any of that work? Or do you know?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know all the ins and outs. I'll tell you the broad picture of it. Basically, I don't think it gives you much more than an opportunity to get on their field and show what you can do. And it seems like, man, a lot of times these guys won't necessarily even stick with the franchise they start with. It'll be more like if you show out and do some good things, another team will come in and say, well, hey, we saw this guy. Maybe you don't have a need. Just let's say Rico. Maybe Dallas doesn't have a need for another running back on their 53-man roster, but the Bengals do or something. Then you'll end up being able to catch on just because, teams are watching the film from preseason and all that stuff as well. So I think it just gives you an opportunity, man. They can cut you loose, I think, about as quickly as they pick you up. And really, whether you make it on a particular team is just going to depend on that team's needs and their numbers and how many running backs do they keep on their roster. And I guess every team probably does it a little bit differently. But, I think Rico, when healthy, really is a talented kid and could have a chance to be maybe, a third string type back in the league. It's just a matter for him of staying healthy. And, I think for all these guys, a lot of times, even if you can just make a practice squad, that gets you in the system. You're getting paid. You're obviously not getting paid like these other guys, but still compared to the rest of us, you're fine, man. So you make a practice squad, stick around, then maybe you hop in on special teams next year, and you find a way to stick. I mean, shoot, dude, Demir Bird has managed – he started out as a practice squad guy. Yep. He's managed to stick in the league for a long time now. So sometimes the guys we expect to stick around in the league, I mean, I thought Eric Norwood was like as good of a player as I've seen at South Carolina, and then just, had his few years in the league and then was gone. And then you see other guys you don't expect to be able to stick around, and they find a way to stick around. So we'll see. Rico's got a chance. Tavian Feaster, if healthy, I think has a chance. The one I've been shocked about has been that we still haven't heard anything about Joseph Charlton getting a undrafted free agent deal, and he's been listed as probably one of the top two punters in this class.
The good thing about kickers, though, is it's kind of like when you need them. Through the year, through the season, we see like Elliott Fry had this random tryout, week 4, week 6, week 8, and then punters, of course, you don't put a lot of stock into them unless they're really great. Like the Colquitts from Tennessee, they were drafted, and the other guys are just kind of picked around, and you try to get a good one. I saw Mark Waite got drafted as a free agent contract as well, right?
Yeah, he got a free agent deal with the Giants, so he'll be up there with Brunson. We'll see. I think it's honestly, it's kind of a crapshoot when you get into the undrafted free agent stuff. You need some luck. You need things to go your way. I think with him, he had another year of eligibility that he could have used. But I think once you get to a certain age and you've dealt with the injuries he did and you're not getting paid to get your body just banged up like you do at that level, I think sometimes it's just time to say, hey, I want to take my shot. I'm going to take my shot while I'm still, of age to do it. No need to add another year of wear on the, tread on the tires. So I think, for him, it's just about moving forward and seeing what was out there and taking his chance. And you never know at that position, what can happen.
That's true. All right. As a whole, I don't know how much of the draft you watched, but did you anything stand out outside of South Carolina? Did you something in particular, a couple things throughout the weekend stand out to you? Particular teams, particular players, anything like that?
I mean, other than like the obvious is that the SEC just keeps crushing the numbers. I think you also, as a guy who follows it in recruiting, you also start to still see from a big picture standpoint, the more highly recruited guys and the more highly, the teams of highly recruited guys generally tend to win and generally tend to have high draft picks. I think, you look percentage-wise, I saw this on Twitter, if you were a five-star guy, your chances of getting drafted are just astronomically higher than if you're like just a three-star guy. And that's including the fact that there's way more three-star guys than there are five-star guys. So you may look and say, well, darn, there's only 15 five-stars drafted. But if you look at the fact that there's only about 25 to 35 five-star guys each recruiting class, that says a lot if like half the five-stars, are getting drafted in a given class. So, that stands out to me. And just the fact, even with everything being shut down, the NFL teams will still find you. I mean, you got guys from small schools I've never heard of. I saw Lenore Ryan getting some love, having a guy drafted.
Right.
And you look at some of these dudes, man, some of these small schools had some freaks. Like, how did these schools – I'd love to go back and see how these schools landed these recruits. Sometimes it's a small town thing where just a guy – just isn't found. Other times it's like a late bloomer, I feel like, where a kid might go from being 160 pounds and 5'9" to being 6'1", 195, in a summer or something. And then other times, I don't know, maybe grades are an issue and they get passed on and then they make the grade late. But that's always intriguing to me is, one, that the NFL finds these dudes, but two, how the hell did they get to Lenore Ryan and end up being an NFL draft pick?
Well, I just had the coach from Last Chance U, Jason Brown, on before you. And I think a lot of it, like you said, a lot of those things, but like grades is probably something that if you're just really bad and they can't even finagle the numbers to get you into a Power 5 school. I mean, if you're that bad, whether you just don't try or you're just dumb or trouble. I think a lot of these guys get in trouble and some teams just don't want that part of their program. If a guy's getting kicked out of school or, causing trouble or maybe an arrest record at 17, you just can't afford to. But like you said, it's crazy. Appalachian State had a couple, like you said, Lenore Ryan, and then a couple of these quarterbacks from schools I had never heard of. And it's amazing with everybody needing a quarterback and so many teams struggling to have a quarterback. I mean, you look this year at, Florida State struggles. I mean, that's the power of the power for us growing up. Florida State's in that top 10 programs. And, a lot of these Big Ten schools don't have a quarterback who can throw a 30-yard pass. It doesn't seem like. It's just weird that you got guys in NAIA and D3, having guys who are really good that end up being NFL, guys. And every year we get that. We've had Ben Roethlisberger from the MAC, and we've had Joe Flacco from Delaware. And you would think Alabama, up until like Hurts and Tua, they could have used either one of those guys because they never really had a great passer to football. But it is interesting. All right, so besides the draft, you're still busy recruiting. Will Muschamp and his staff's busy recruiting. Signed some guys here of late, or had some guys commit, I guess, not signed. But so who's the focus right now? Who the big fish they're looking to land, and what's going on in the recruiting with all this stuff shut down?
Yeah, man, it's been weird. They've really just stayed on it. It's obviously a little bit different. They can't be on the road right now. I think that affects a lot as far as evaluation, because this was a big evaluation time. The spring is. High schools are doing their spring practices normally right now, and coaches love, by NCAA rule, they can get around and actually watch the kids at practice, which is a big part of eval. And so that hurts. That hurts everybody. Hurts the coaches, hurts the kids. And, the kids are very frustrated right now because, they can't turn around and visit the schools and see what they're all about. A lot of these kids, it's a trend. They want to be done with the process before their senior year starts, if possible, if they already have a bunch of offers. So, it's affected everything. I think the guys have sort of fallen into two categories. About half the kids, and I don't know if it's exactly half, but just seems like some kids are like, I'm just going to get everything over with, and I'm going to commit to a school that I got to see in person before everything got shut down. And some kids are going the opposite direction, saying, I'm going to just push it back and commit once I can go take some visits and once things normalize again. So it's been interesting. Most of the recruiting has been on the phone, on FaceTime, on Zoom, stuff like that. And yeah, but there's still a bunch of guys. There's some guys in state. I mean, you look, Justice Boone's committed to Florida, but South Carolina's still after him. That's the defensive end from down the road in Sumter. There's a kid at Marion, TJ Sanders. He's blown up. Really good defensive line prospect. I think South Carolina's in really good shape with him. You look down the road in Rock Hill, Robbie Oots. He's a tight end prospect that, man, this guy quietly, and it's because he doesn't like really do the whole Twitter thing or put out all of his offers. I mean, this guy has South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. I mean, just has a massive offer list. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins and Gaffney, defensive lineman there. For this class, a really good player. He's got a huge offer list. I think he's maybe got 25 plus offers. J.J. Jones at Myrtle Beach has about 35 offers. Trying to think if I'm missing anybody. Those are
who's the kid from I guess Hilton Head that as a sophomore got an Alabama offer?
Yeah. So that you look across class of 20, that's 2022 would be sophomore, rising junior. Honestly, man, that class probably going to be much stronger than our current class as far as just having big time Division I, like FBS, high quality offers. So Hilton Head has a kid. Malden has a cornerback that's really good. Greer has a receiver that's good. I'm sure I'm forgetting guys for that class, but it's already it's on I would say a faster pace where guys are already picking up bigger offers, which is kind of amazing considering considering where things are right now as far as the process. Hilton Head, I think Jalen McCrary is the Hilton Head kid's name. All the names run together at some point for me, but yeah. So we'll see, man. I mean, they're prioritizing North Carolina a bit when they can. Of course, Georgia, Florida, Alabama. And they're off to I think a decent start, all things considered. I like the hire of Des Kitchings. I think he's a good recruiter as well. Will bring some North Carolina ties. So we'll see, man. But it's been weird. It's been interesting to kind of follow.
All right, last question. I'll let you go. I want to ask you how you deal with this. I noticed it the other day. I noticed, Gamecock fans are let's say, as Cowherd says, fan is short for fanatic. So at times, Gamecock fans, and I've had to distance myself. I'm generally a neutral guy just because I don't want to be lumped in there. How do you deal with, you made this statement after the draft, first two signings for Will Muschamp got drafted, and that's that's great to say the first two guys he picked are on NFL rosters now, and some guy shoots back. So what? They were 4-8 last year. What's your point? And you said, I'm just stating a fact. How do you deal with what I would consider trolls? Because, and I'm sure a lot of people who aren't Carolina fans follow you. So Clemson fans are probably throwing jabs, sometimes, or other schools that just feel like, or just people in a bad mood, just feel like saying, shut up, Wes, that's stupid. Or, how do you deal with it? Because, I mean, most of your content is either Gamecock Central, Twitter, and stuff like that. You're putting out information and you're pointing out facts and stats. But how do you deal with buttholes who come on there and just deliberately trying to get at you? Because you're kind of soft-spoken. Like, oh, for me, that's great. If you do that to me, I'll sit there with an hour with you and we'll go. We'll throw blow for blow. I know you're not into that game, especially, as a representative of, the university and Gamecock Central. How do you deal with it? You just let it go, or you just try to, how do you deal with trolls? I think it's interesting for you because you're not a get-in-your-face kind of guy. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It really depends on my mood. If I'm just not in the mood, a lot of times I'll ignore it. If I'm in the mood, but I lose interest in it so fast. Like, even if I fire back something, or sort of get into a little back and forth, generally I end up just like stopping because I get bored with it. Because a lot of times if they are just trolling you, nobody's gonna give in on their side.
Right.
And and in that case, it was kind of funny. Like, I think 5 people came, including Chris Payne, came back and were just like firing back. A lot of times, especially the best thing is just to, like, if you retweet the person who's coming at you, and then just let everybody, if it's a if it's a terrible take, like it's just awful, just point it out to everyone, and then everybody else just jumps in, and then I sort of sit back and watch. But if I'm in a bad mood or if I'm in a bored mood, I'll maybe go back and forth a little bit. But otherwise, I just sort of hang tight. I've learned it doesn't matter what you say, man. People are there's gonna be a certain very small percent that are gonna have something to say. And I'm not as good as you are at coming up with the Facebook things just to get people talking about it. For people who don't read your Facebook posts, I know you've had some good ones.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I just like discussing stuff. But then some people just take it the wrong way. And then when they do, then you're in a battle. And hey, right now, for the last 6 weeks, I have nothing else to do. So if you want to battle, just come on in there. But now I can see it being aggravating. And I know on your level, but even bigger level, like me and buddies of mine have had this discussion. Can you imagine LeBron James posting a picture shooting basketball? And then you got, 300,000 likes, 25,000. You wake up in the morning, you got 25,000 comments. And most of them are, man, I love you, LeBron. You great, LeBron. And then you got, man, you suck. You ain't in the top 10. Man, you terrible. Your hair's terrible. You lost the final. You lost 3 out of 9 final, And I couldn't imagine being somebody who is getting trolled all the time. I guess maybe you cut your mentions or whatever off. But I even see it with a bigger journalist on national ESPN and Fox. I mean, no matter what they say, people just fire in there. And I guess you just got to set the phone down. And like you said, a lot of times if you retweet the bad take, they end up deleting the tweet because they realize they're a fool or they end up getting made out to look like a fool. So I was just wondering, because you're kind of soft-spoken guy, you just giving the facts, you saying the good things about the players, but I know there's buttheads out there who always like to come in and just try to rain on their parade. So I think you handled it well. I hadn't seen you get out of sorts yet. I'm glad you
maybe
got
one day, man.
I'm glad you got
everybody's a critic is the problem right now. Everybody's a critic, and everybody and it does offer some discussion, but at the same time, sometimes it is there's like healthy discussion, and there's just, all right, you're just trolling and giving a take that's so off that we can't even have that discussion,
Well, some people with a 4-8 season aren't going to find any positives. I mean, at the bottom line, they're going to say, look, man, this guy's hit this, he's been here this many years. He did this, he's gotten this, and now we're 4-8. On the other side, what hurts even more is Clemson's playing for a national champion. I think, when you're 2 hours away, the team that, you played tit for tat over the last 10 years, 5-5, or now maybe 6-5 or whatever it is. But, you could beat that team you used to beat. Now that team's Alabama level, and you drop down to Kentucky's level or however you want to level it out. And it kind of hurts in all sports, really. I mean, you're talking about, baseball isn't as was a dominant force years ago. And other than ladies basketball, women's basketball, we're really not. So I guess Gamecock fans are just kind of pissed off wanting a winner. But you do a fine job. Appreciate you bringing all the information. You're good to talk to because you know what you're talking about. You know these kids from 16, 17, 18 on up until they go into the NFL draft. So you do a fine job, Wes. Appreciate you being my A1 Gamecock correspondent. And when I get those 100,000 followers, we'll do a daily or maybe every Monday recap. I'll have you on the big screen.
Yeah, if we get to 100,000, we're putting some sponsors on this thing, man, and I'm gonna be your Monday everyday guy. So we'll hopefully we'll get there, man.
Maybe we can do one live from Columbia Craft or the Ale House or wherever. We'll get one of them big dogs in here once we get this this economy open back up. That'd be great. Yeah, Wes, I appreciate you coming in. Appreciate your knowledge. Appreciate your time. Thanks for talking with me. I'll have you on soon.
Sounds good, man.
Good to see you.